Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where you join me back in the UK here at Chartwell for an update with my AMG GT Black Series that is currently being resprayed from its original graphite grey Magno to my choice of Solarbeam yellow. Now I've come up today in the GTR Roadster fresh from the adventure around Europe and we'll touch more on that later, but meanwhile the guys have been cracking on and the vast majority of the car is already yellow and we can head inside to go and check it out before today the main body is actually in the paint booth itself to be transformed. We can see some of the process, watch this with our very own eyes as the Shmeemobile gets its new look. So let's head inside then here at Chartwell and go see how the parts are looking. Very quickly though, before we go inside at Chartwell to see the new yellow panels and to watch some of the painting process, an update with the GTR Roadster, because when I did the spec for this car originally, it was with half a mind as to what I was intending to do at the time with the as yet unreleased GT Black Series. I'll explain in a moment, but of course I've just driven it back over from Germany. It's had a quick clean and is looking much better as a result. You can finally see the satin black on the wheels again. They were looking a bit bronzy and dusty before, but it's gone through 5,000 miles, did about 1,000 miles more on this trip, including some laps of the Nürburgring, and of course the visit to Opus to install the new bucket seats, which are great, especially for that long drive back. But this car I spec'd in Hyacinth Red, the paintwork combined with the accents in the yellow brake calipers. Inside, for example, we have the yellow seat belts as well as the yellow stitching, plus also now on the new seats, the yellow AMG headrest embroidery, and those yellow accents were all done thinking ahead for what this would look like when parked alongside the GT Black Series in full Solarbeam yellow. I also noticed that Puppy 150 has given it the googly eye treatment, as seems to happen to some of the Shmeemobiles, but I think we should head inside then here at Chartwell to go and see what they've been doing while I've been away. Look what we've got here then, the painted panels for the GT Black Series in Solarbeam yellow. This is awesome. The last time I was here, the panels had all been removed off the car, they were prepped, they were ready to go into the paint booth where the body of the car is at the moment. But of course here we've got the bonnet, we've got the boot lid, we've got the front bumper, the doors, the side sills, the front wings, the rear bumper. The various different panels are in different states at the moment. So for example, these parts have just been painted. You can tell they haven't done the final finishing processes to the paintwork, but the way that they've masked this off to leave the exposed carbon fiber on the bonnet, there'll be a completely flat feel to that as it transitions from carbon to the painted surfaces. Look fantastic. If we come through, the front wings have been done. Look at the quality of this paint. Look at this Solarbeam yellow, the metallic pearlescent that we're going to see being painted onto the body in a moment, the integrated fenders on this full carbon panel. In fact, you have the parts here which are done separately. We've again got the contrast of the carbon fiber with the yellow here on the rear bumper that needs finishing up, but the paintwork is looking awesome. You can see how the sills have been masked off to make sure that those can be done properly. I'm in absolute paradise being around these parts. I cannot wait to see what this is going to look like when these have all been completely reassembled. Obviously quite a brave decision to do the boot lid, because typically on the GT Black Series these are in gloss black regardless of what colour you have the car, but I wanted to give it a unique touch, so this was one of those details that I chose to do. And obviously the window had to be removed to do this. You can see how that looks under the skin, and then the wing gets mounted onto the back of it. We've got some of the other parts here, for example the roof rails, to tie in the effect of doing the boot lid, because if you do this, it would otherwise have run into gloss black. Over the top, you've got the carbon central piece in the roof, so we needed to do these yellow as well. Things like the fuel filler cap, that must be the towing eye hook from here on the front bumper. Those are those side panels I just talked about, and the door handle pieces as well, which always have that chrome finish on half of them. So that's pretty exciting, I think it has to be said, to be able to see the panels there. But if we come over this way into the paint booth, have a look at what's awaiting us inside. Check this out, my AMG GT Black Series, fully prepped and prepared here, ready to be painted. This is the main part of the car. We had a full look around it before to make sure we had an understanding of exactly what was being done. The surfaces have all been prepared. It's quite a lengthy process to key them, to get them fully ready for the process we're going to be seeing. They go through a few different stages to obviously get this far, but you can see how this is done. keeping the roof carbon fibre but going inside the rails so that you don't see anything odd there. Going around the doors, the quarter window back here having to be removed as well, the door sills, and then tucking in through the hinges as well. But as I said before, effectively leaving the engine bay, no point in taking out the engine. I ordered the car in the graphite grey Magno, effectively the satin dark grey or satin black paint as the best base coat, so that we wouldn't have any funny looks, let's say, in the engine bay when all is completed. But this is really quite bizarre to see it looking like this, and shortly we're going to see the transition then from this as it goes through the first layer being painted, I think, in a grey primer, before very shortly after that the Solarbeam is going to be painted on top, and this today is turning yellow. We're going to be seeing all of that very shortly. Before we go and see the paintwork being done, with all of these panels here in the yellow, you can see why we put together this design representing both the original colour and the new colour of the GT Black Series. That's in the Cheers by Shmee 150 shop, along with the same design in other colours and plenty more as well. So go and check those out. For now, I'm just going to oogle this a little bit more before the paintwork is going to begin. This is it then. The magic has begun. A big thanks to the team at Chartwell for making it possible to see this, but the car had its final layers of preparation and it's now getting the primer coat painted. This is really quite cool. The biggest change is going to be in a moment when we can see it going yellow, but even with the primer already, you can see quite a lighter grey than the original colour. I'm really excited right now to see this transformation. Manual process, and it's going to mean the perfect result at the end. This is really cool. There's already a significant change here then. As you can see, the primer coat is down. The car is almost looking Nardo grey or something like that. The colour of the primer over those panels, obviously all completely masked up, but it's epic to be able to see this, to be behind the scenes, to see the work, and to see this car going Solarbeam. The cool thing now is that we can actually go in and take a quick look at this. It's had some time for everything to settle down. It's effectively satin Nardo grey, and it actually looks pretty good. Somebody should do their car in this kind of colour. We've also got these add-on arch pieces. They're done at exactly the same time, but this is of course to give it the right base for the Solarbeam, all as per spec. Chartwell are the approved Mercedes shop to do exactly this, and they have worked on Solarbeam cars before, hence why I've chosen to bring it here. And you can see that this is all masked up for the purpose. It gets this layer, and then very shortly it's going to be going yellow on top, and that is the bit that I'm super excited to be able to see. While there's some more preparation and final checkovers on the surface, here we have the spray gun with the Solarbeam. That is the paint that is going on my car in a moment. It will be wired up, obviously connected to the airline, and then sprayed onto this in just a matter of minutes. This is very cool to be directly seeing the car being painted, the first layer of Solarbeam yellow going down. Of course, it gets a few different layers, a few coats to get the final effect. But we can see this whole rear section being painted yellow. Quite the remarkable change from satin black to Solarbeam yellow via the grey in the process. This is going to be so cool. Watching this is actually mesmerising. I could see this all the way through, watching it change. And obviously when the paint goes down, before it's lacquered, it will turn almost matte in effect. So we'll have a period when it will look matte Solarbeam, you could say. Obviously working around the window seals at the moment, the rubber strips will be installed later, and those are parts that are probably going to prove to be quite hard to find with such a brand new car that's still in production. But look at this. The yellow has begun. The transformation to the Solarbeam, working through that area at the back of the boot lid as well. It's a tricky section, I think. Obviously around the carbon of the roof, which is all fully masked up, that will be left clear, visible carbon fibre. Have to excuse me filming through the glass here, but hey, I think it's pretty cool to be able to see this. Work begins then on the second side of the car. It is very satisfying to see this changing, as I suppose we will now see the whole of this corner of the car, with the hole that's masked up on the side of it for the fuel filler cap that was already done, as this goes yellow. There is a skill to this, to getting this right. The amount for each coat and the finished effect. It's really quite fun to watch, as the canister is slowly depleting as well in the spray gun. Now this is just awesome. This is so cool to see. Obviously across the roof rails and the seals on this side. I can't wait for the finished result of this. After a bit of time to sit then, we can go inside to have a look at the Solarbeam yellow on the GT Black Series. As I said, this is the first coat. You can see the satin effect. You can almost see a little bit of the grey, but obviously that's why it gets multiple coats, which is what's going to be coming up now. The spray booth is also very clever where we are, by the way, in terms of heating and cooling, going through different temperature cycles, all to best prepare the paint. So let's see the next coat. This is quite fun to see a little bit of the paint mixing process. You have this entire rack of all of the different types of ingredients almost of the mix. The computer system calculates exactly what we're going for. In this case, to make the AMG Solarbeam, tells you exactly how much of each that you would need, down to 1/10 of a gram, and should you actually go over, it recalculates as well to tell you then what you need of the others. But doing this, you can see it starts mostly with the clear, almost white liquid that we have there, a touch of yellow. When that gets mixed in, it will start to form the AMG Solarbeam using the various different paints that we have. Obviously all of these manufacturer OEM spec to get this precisely correct. This is a mix of tinters, the bright yellows that we have here, and the binder as well, with the different parts that formulate the paint. And the beauty of this obviously is to be able to make exactly the right colour of every different kind of colour and get it spot on every time. This is the fun part of the process then, as it goes into our favourite Solarbeam. Perfectly done. The process to reload the gun. New paint goes into that almost bag that obviously we saw having been depleted a little bit earlier on. The start of the second coat then. This is where it's going to get much more depth. We're going to see much more of the Solarbeam. Apologies for any focus or struggles through the glass, but it's so cool to be able to see this, to watch it as it changes. It's actually really interesting how much even the human eyes can see the next layer. It's noticeably just a deeper, richer paint. Obviously we'll be able to see again when that's all finished, and you'll see the change as the grey undertone has completely departed from it, and then ultimately that becomes the finished effect. The second coat is now completed, but the car remains inside the spray booth. You can also see the last of the paint, which is actually inside a little bag installed there in the canister on the spray gun, but the spray booth itself is now effectively heating up, going towards a target of 45 degrees Celsius, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, for a short period of time. It's currently at 40, to make sure that it bakes the paint properly, and then after that's completed, it will actually cool it back down. And it's important that it goes through the exact same, effectively, temperature changes and process for each part of the car, but you can start to see that more mustard yellow shining through the Solarbeam, and we'll be able to go and see it up close in just a moment. Let's come and take a look at this then. Check out the car with the second coat down. This is technically the first of the 3 layers, the triple layer paint that we have here being the yellow on top of the primer, of course. Then next we're going to get the pearl coat before it gets the lacquer, but you can see now that it's had time to settle. We've got that almost satin finish to the yellow before it gets the metallic and then the shine a little bit after. But seeing this transformation before our very own eyes, this is really quite something. The idea, the vision that I had for the car way back to do this, to turn it into Solarbeam, to make it something even more special as a Schmeemobile, and we are seeing it as this paint goes down. You can see the changes that it's already gone through from that first coat of the Solarbeam through towards the second, and now that that's baked, I think it can get the metallic layer and start on the pearl coat. Now mixing up the pearl coat. That's actually really quite fun to see the colour significantly changing. And on goes the first of 2 pearl coats. It's actually done one straight after the other. It doesn't need to be baked between. This is what will give it the metallic flake, as well as also the flop in the paint, so we get the difference between the brighter highlights in the yellow and the more mustard, darker sections when looking at the completed car. With that layer down, now with a sun gun, turn this on, and we can start to see the metallic flake in the Solarbeam. That looks really good actually. And this is of course before the lacquer, which is going to be the next stage, the third stage of the tri-coat, the triple layer that this is going to be getting. but this is already starting to look the part. We also now have the mix for the lacquer. Quite interesting to see that even this is not as simple as you might think. There is a mixture of different, again, ingredients into the lacquer that's going to go onto the car. The lacquer process is a little bit different because we can't really see all that much. Of course, it does get significantly glossier. This has 2 coats of lacquer. The first is done, then it's about a 5-minute flash off time before the second is done immediately afterwards, and then it gets about 20 minutes to bake after that. Oh yeah, I'm starting to see the shine coming through from this. And immediately on to the next stages of the process. Here with the bonnet, which is one of the panels that's been obviously painted and lacquered, but hasn't been finished. Now we can see some of the steps of this, starting at the moment with flattening the lacquer. Now during the painting process, this particular panel has been quite the project because of the exposed carbon. So effectively, after doing each layer, each coat, each stage, the base coats, the pearl coat and the lacquer, it's being completely smoothened to make sure that there is no step change between the exposed carbon and the Solarbeam. You don't feel this edge at all. It is brilliantly, brilliantly done. And that's quite complicated, but what happens now is flattening over the surface to completely eliminate any imperfections, using the fact that there's a decent quantity of lacquer on here before eventually machine polishing it to bring the shine back through to give us the effect that we've seen earlier on some of the other panels. And this has to be done completely by hand. It's a very time-intensive process, but it creates this absolutely perfect finish and means that we have the better than factory quality result at the very end of it, which is exactly why this is so good, because honestly, it will be perfect when it's all done. The next run over is with a different pad on the machine, which will change obviously the result, effectively taking out some of the mini scratches, you could say, that are put into the surface from the previous pad that flattens it. It's a multi-stage process to finish this and to go through it, and it's really quite interesting actually to see how it changes over time, and in a second we'll get a view of what the result is like. The first pad was effectively a 1500, the one we just saw was a 3000, now with a 6000, getting even finer and finer before it will then get machine polished, but each stage effectively refines even more than the previous, and this is exactly as was done with my SLS and produced that finish. That is the reason I have brought this car here to be done by Chartwell as well. The machine polisher is out in action, and this is where it brings out the shine and starts to make this look like the finished result, exactly as to show you quickly again we have here. In fact, if I turn on the light quickly, look at this. This is beautiful, and this is how all of the parts of the car will be at the end of the day. We can now come back over to the spray booth where the car has now had 25 minutes baking at 75 degrees. That's pretty serious. It's now looking nearly there. Of course, with all the masking, it is a little bit odd. You have to imagine it when all of the tape and film has been removed, but the color is looking magnificent. This will need the same process in terms of flattening and polishing over the entirety of the car, all of the different areas of it. But yes, I think shortly it can be brought out of the spray booth and we'll get to see what this looks like lined up next to the other parts. Another thing to talk about quickly, you will remember the discussion regarding the badges, the V8 bi-turbo badges that the car has on either side. Behind the V8, you have that red outline. Now that's the only thing on this entire car that is red other than the rear reflectors and the brake lights. So I was a bit unsure about this one. Well, it turns out you can separate the backing from the titanium that you have on the main badges, and as such, we're going to change these. We're going to make these gloss black, so there'll be a gloss black surround behind the V8 badges. Of course, it's only on the V8 part, as opposed to the red. Now, there are a few gloss black parts on the car. The covers that go on here are gloss black. If we come through on the rear bumper, you can see here, these parts are gloss black as well, so it's not totally alien to the car to actually do that. He says carefully squeezing back past all of the parts here. So that is the plan at the moment, to change those with the original badges, to keep these in case I ever decide to go for the red in the future, but to start off with making those gloss black. Just another unique detail that's going to make this car slightly different from others. But back over here, the car is being demasked. We have those gigantic wide rear tyres. The exhaust system you can see a bit of back here, and how it's mounted, and there might be some changes to come with this in the not too distant future, so stay tuned for that as well. But it starts to give us a bit more of an idea of what this is like, and when we do pull it out of the spray booth, the look of the colour will change as well, and here it's under quite different lighting. So I'm looking forward to seeing that change. But obviously in here it's all about spotting any imperfections that might come up during the paintwork process to make sure that it's all spotted before it's too late. That very quiet startup, we definitely need to fix that. But hey, unmasked and coming out of the spray booth. Out it emerges, and yes, as expected, the color is changing significantly, seeing it under different light and seeing the whole of the engine bay as well in the process, because of course the whole front end of this car has been removed, which is quite unusual. But that's where we have our V8, and now the car arrives with all of the other panels. This is so cool. Yeah, spot on color match. What a perfect result. Now to wait for it all to be reassembled. I think though, for the time being, that is basically where we're going to be leaving things. Of course, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of finishing off the paint, and then of course the big process of reinstalling all of the parts, reassembling the GT Black Series, plus the other parts that are off in the storage at the moment, until ultimately this will be a completed Solarbeam GT Black Series. And I'm sorry for saying Solarbeam, paint, GT Black Series, and a few other things far too many times this video, but exciting times with this car. Exciting to see this stage of the process. Some very quick work that the team here at Chartwell are doing, but there are a few more questions I do want to answer quickly, so we'll head outside and get ready to head off. But for now, I'm looking forward to coming back to seeing what happens next with this. That is some solid progress. We're probably about 3 weeks away now from all being completed with the respray, subject to the arrival of some parts that are required, by which I mean seals, one-time use clips, that kind of thing, to be able to reassemble the car, and then I can come and collect it, take it down to Topaz, do the PPF, and then the adventures can begin. For today though, before we hop back on board the GTR Roadster to head back home, I want to touch on some of the more common questions that I've seen from you guys about doing the respray, some of which I've answered before, but by far and away the most frequently asked question is, why didn't I just order the car in AMG Solarbeam? Well, here in the UK we actually had only the choice of 8 different colours for the car. Some markets had 10 colours, and I believe a few select VIPs, perhaps AMG ONE customers, have been able to order one-off colours for the GT Black Series, but believe me, I tried, and for me I only had the choice of the 8 different colours, hence choosing the graphite grey Magno as effectively the best base colour to do the respray. Now actually, as it happens, AMG have completely cut Solarbeam across the board. You can't even order a GTC in Solarbeam anymore, so I don't know even if you could get one of the one-off colours, if you could even actually do Solarbeam. So it made sense, well, given it was completely irrelevant for me, to do this plan, to bring it here to Chartwell, especially after the success I had changing the SLS Black Series to Mystic Blue, knowing that the end result would be perfect, and to make it Solarbeam, because that was always the plan. That was the colour I chose years ago. I did want it originally on my AMG GTR Coupe, the first one, but I was put off it because of the price. Here in the UK, it was about £11,000 as an option, and because over in Germany, it was only 8,600 euros, which at the time would have been just under £7,000. I was kind of put off due to the imbalance of that. Then I thought about it for the Pro, but decided at that point to save it for the Black Series. Same with the Roadster, same with the SLS Black. So when I heard that Solarbeam was going to be discontinued and not available for the GT, it was kind of, well, I want to do this anyway. I'd planned it for so long, and after doing the SLS, knowing it would be in good hands, I decided to just go for the graphite grey Magno. I only had a few days to choose the colour for my spec, and that was the route I decided to take. So that is why we're respraying it. You might therefore be wondering, why didn't I just wrap the car in yellow? Well, the GT Black Series is very much a permanent schmeemobile. I'm going to do loads of miles with it, hopefully travel around the world with it, take it to tons of events, track days, you name it. And as such, I want that perfect paint finish. I want it to be a permanent thing. I don't want it to look good for a year or two. And although wraps are getting much better, as we've seen from my GT4 and Taycan, and they look really good if you do them, let's say, shorter term, it's not the same. It won't look the same after 20 years and, let's say, 50 to 100,000 miles. It won't be the same results. So that's why I wanted to do the respray, to do it properly, and I chose to come here to Chartwell. They've done tons of these level of cars. They did such a good job on my Senna, hence bringing the SLS here as well, and they've already done such a good job with this. And this is where if you ever needed some work done on a top-end Mercedes-Benz here, it will probably end up coming anyway. AMG ONEs in the future, SLRs, Black Series models, they basically are the authorized repair center to do all of this kind of work, so it makes sense to do it here, and they've been really, really good. So a huge thanks to them for looking after this. To touch for a moment though on the GTR Roadster, parked here roof down, looking awesome with the new seats. Having driven it for the 500 miles or so to get it back home, I am just as happy as I was during the lap at the Nürburgring with these. A very, very positive upgrade. They are more comfortable for me, even though you might not think so because of being bucket seats. They just support me way better than the standard seats do. I prefer the shape, I prefer the molding. It works better for me, and overall, I think they look awesome. I know some people would perhaps prefer to have the air scarf, but for me, a car like this is even better with buckets, and that combination of a wing on the back, convertible, two-seat, almost supercar with bucket seats is something incomparable. For today though, I think that is pretty much all. We've got a long journey to get back home, but great to see behind the scenes the painting of my GT Black Series turning literally into Solarbeam. I now cannot wait to get back up here to probably the day I come to collect it. Maybe I can come up again and see things coming back together. We'll see how that goes. For now though, that is all. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you to the team here at Chartwell, but that's it for this time, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.